want to welcome to our microphones John Lott. John Lott Jr., a FoxNews.com contributor, an economist, and author of More Guns, Less Crime, and also Lad Everitt, director of Communications Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and also serves as a volunteer in a volunteer capacity with the D.C. Crisis Response Team, offering referral services and support to victims and survivors of homicide in D.C. I welcome you both. Lad, let me start with you. What does this decision mean from today?
Well, basically what it means is that the Supreme Court has determined that the Second Amendment is incorporated at the state level. So basically the right that they defined in the previous Heller decision in 2008, they now say that the states have to observe that right and cannot infringe on it. And in terms of specifically what Alito said in terms of the substance of the right, in McDonald in this ruling, he focused very tightly on the ability or the right of an individual to own a handgun inside the home for self-defense, and that was his key focus here.
But it was a very narrow decision, but doesn't that remand to the states the right to make more, perhaps broader decisions about guns?
Well, he remands the ruling back down to the lower court, and they will probably strike down that handgun ban. But there's a very interesting section of the opinion where Justice Alito basically says, if you go back to Heller, he says, we stated that many different types of gun control laws are perfectly constitutional. The ones that he cites are, laws that would prohibit certain classes of dangerous individuals from getting guns, laws governing the commercial sale of firearms, and then also laws prohibiting the carrying of guns in certain sensitive public places. So Justice Alito basically says, we reaffirm that all these laws are both perfectly reasonable and constitutional. And then he goes one step beyond that, and he says the McDonald ruling, quote-unquote, does not imperil every law regulating firearms. And he comes out and says that outright.
John Lott, do you agree with that analysis?
No, not really. I mean, the court faced a narrow question here, and that was whether a ban on handguns was constitutional or not. These other issues will come up at later dates when further suits are filed. He's not ruling them out one way or the other. It's quite possible that some of those types of regulations they'll find are reasonable regulations, but it's putting the cart before the horse to go and say that they've made decisions on things that weren't even before the court.
What do you think the future is, though, John? I mean, is it possible that people on your side of the debate are going to be more it seems like everybody's claiming victory here. The people who want gun control saying this is very narrow, don't get carried away, and people on your side are saying, hey, this is great, more guns.
No, I don't know. Maybe I'm someplace in the middle then. I think this is important for people who believe in self-defense. But I think it's also important to recognize that it is limited because it only deals with one narrow type of laws, and that is a complete ban on handguns. It also reaffirmed what was in Heller. Heller covered a complete ban as well as gun locks, so presumably that's covered here. But obviously, you look at what happened in D.C. after the Heller decision. They imposed a $550 fee for people to go and register their handgun. You have to go to the police station 4 times. You have to take a class.
But is that good?
I don't think those are good.
You don't think those are good? But wait a minute. Here's interesting. You wrote a piece for FoxNews.com, John, and you talk about, hey, since this happened, crime is down in D.C., fell by 25% in 2009 alone. Then you want to talk about all these restrictions you just mentioned. Isn't it possible that those restrictions are what's responsible for the reduction in crime?
No, because the restrictions are less than what they were before. Before you had a complete ban on handguns. Now at least you have some. My belief is that the biggest change that they had in the law was the gun lock rules. The fact that prior to Heller, it was illegal to have a functional gun in the city limits. That if you had a gun that was loaded and able to fire, even if you were using it in self-defense, you were committing a crime. And the Supreme Court said that you can't have gun locks like that because it essentially makes the use of the gun for defensive purposes useless. And so you have 70,000 individuals that own long guns in Washington, D.C., who are now able to use them legally for self-defense. Do I think if you were able to let even more people have guns and reduce the regulations even further, you'd have a greater reduction? Yes.
Lad, you want to... Yeah, let me
at least there's been
go ahead.
a significant liberalization from what you had previously.
Let me get you to respond to that. Of course, John's argument has been and been consistent over the years that more guns means less crime. What about those statistics he's mentioning?
Well, let me make a few points here. I mean, in terms of what we should expect from this ruling, we should expect Chicago to enact a very tough licensing and registration law once, as we can assume, the lower court strikes down the handgun ban, very much like D.C. has. And if history operates according to how it's operated in D.C., that law will be challenged by the gun lobby and will withstand the challenge. In fact, in March of this year, a challenge reached its way to the U.S. District Court for D.C., and that court ruled that our licensing and registration law and tough laws governing assault weapons were perfectly constitutional and in no way infringed on the core Second
But what
Amendment
about John's basic argument that liberalizing gun laws actually reduces crime?
Well, I think you'd have a tough. Well, number one, I don't think guns cause crime. I think that's a theory he's advanced that I don't see anyone in the gun violence prevention movement advancing. I think guns make crime more lethal. But I think when you look at gun death rates per capita in the U.S., and you see that the states with the lowest per capita gun death rates are the five are Hawaii, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, and the 5 states with the highest gun death rates are Louisiana, Mississippi, Alaska, Alabama, and Nevada. It's a pretty tough argument to make that giving easy access to guns leads to less shootings.
John, what about that?
Well, I make 2 points. One, just on the general issue of gun bans. I can't find one place in the entire world where we've had a gun ban and murder rates have gone down. I mean, people know about Washington, D.C. and Chicago, where we've had gun bans. We had big increases in murder rates. People are beginning to learn that when the gun ban was removed in Washington, D.C., we saw a significant drop in murder rates. But it's not just here. People say, well, it wasn't a fair test in Washington, D.C. and Chicago because we don't have a ban all over the place and criminals can go and get guns and bring them into those areas. But you can look at island nations around the world that have had gun bans. And every place, whether it was England or whether it was Ireland or Jamaica, you saw increases in murder rates relative to what they were in the past. And when they're talking about, these numbers that he's throwing around here, one of the big things that he's including is suicides. In the rural areas, suicides are relatively high. But it has nothing to do with guns being present there. What it has to do with is that in rural areas you have relatively more men than women, and you have all sorts of other things that happen there that help contribute to it. There's lots of research that's done on this type of issue. And to go and lump in people who commit suicides in with these numbers, I think is pretty misleading.
Ladd, you want to respond?
Oh, I'd love to respond. I mean, I think I must live on a different planet than John Lott, because when you compare our gun death rates and our murder rates to other industrialized democracies, you'll find that we have a far higher murder rate from all causes, but then an astronomically higher gun death rate. John mentioned Britain. We have an overall homicide rate more than 3 times as high, and a gun death rate more than 30 times higher.
How do you count Ladd, how do you account for the stats in D.C. where the murder rate's gone down and crime has gone down as the gun laws have been relaxed?
Well, I think there's many different factors that affect crime, but I think it's important to realize that D.C. still has very, very strict gun laws on the books. I think it's also important to understand that 97% of our crime guns in D.C. are originally purchased in outside states by traffickers who then bring them into the city. So criminals aren't exploiting D.C.'s laws to get these guns. They're exploiting laws in places like Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, North Carolina, where it's easy to, load up on guns, traffic them, and drive them right across the border.
John is itching to get in. Go ahead, John.
Here's what you have to understand. A change in the laws and a change in crime. Whatever factors you want to go and already mention, we're already there. And the point is now D.C. changes its gun laws and you see a drop. You mentioned England. What you don't mention is that before England had any gun control laws, it had an even relatively lower murder rate than the United States did. The gap between England and the United States has gotten smaller the more gun control laws England has had. And that's true in other places. You want to look at Hawaii or, Hawaii.